This is the big conversation on The Breakfast Show here on KBC English Service.
We have a whole lot to discuss. Joining us, our favorites of the show, advocates of the High Court. We have George Keithy.
How are you?
How
was your week?
It's been great. It was my birthday on Tuesday, by the way.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. I have something I'll give you after this.
We love it. Emily Murigu, advocate of the High Court as well.
How are you?
I am great. It's my dad's birthday today, by the way.
Happy birthday to him.
You arranged it so well.
I know. I know, right? And this is true. Happy birthday, Mr. Joseph Ndeda.
Happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday to him.
Yeah, let's get things starting. Before everything else, let me pick your quick thoughts on the latest from the CS Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndeng'u, that the government is unable to pay civil servants because of the following reasons. Let us take a listen to this.
1 year, Kenya has gone into two extremes. There's severe drought and now there is El Nino. In both cases, we have reallocated supplementary budget and recurrent budget and even development budget to save lives in both cases. At the same time, because those extremes also create a recession, we are not getting adequate tax revenues. So you can imagine. By the way, I can tell you, we are even having trouble with salaries. We are clearing salaries with arrears. In fact, I was even called by the governor in Nairobi County telling me that, look, I'm going to be impeached. What are we going to do? I have not given salaries. It's a liquidity issue, which is short term. So we are going to ride over this. But in the meantime, we are just begging for a little bit of time. We are working 24 hours to make sure that we resolve this.
Well, okay. So, Treasury CS Professor Njuguna Ndung'u's there telling government that things are thick. How thick are things? Like, okay, what are we looking at? When you hear statements like that, what feelings does it evoke? Let's start with you, Keithy. What do you make of this statement?
First, where there is smoke, there is certainly fire.
Absolutely.
When you're packaging a situation or your own situation which is negative, you do not definitely say, "Oh, I'm on my deathbed, I will die." You say good things, package in a matter of fashion as to give hope. So if that is the best packaging that there was from the good CS, if that was the best packaging to give hope to Kenyans, then it means the actual packaging should honestly be really worse.
It's much worse.
Well, an employee honestly should not care about the things the employer goes through. All it is if an employee has worked, that employee must be compensated contractually.
Yes.
So at the end of the month, the employee has to be paid. That's the rule of law, really. And therefore, excuses by the employer implicate the employer, that is negatively. When Kibaki took over, by this time he was thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Into his tenure, by this time he was thriving. There was booming business in Kenya, there was money all over. You see why? Because he didn't send shockwaves into the economy. What he did, he's opened up the banks and told them, you go lending. Mm-hmm. He brought up down interest rates, and then he allowed businesses to thrive. Fast forward is, if you start your policy through threats in terms of bludgeoning people with either taxes or intimidation into increased taxes, what you do is you recede the economy, because people now don't volunteer to invest. People do not then volunteer to take risks.
Yep.
And then also people avoid taxes. Tax avoidance is legal. What it is instead, if I do this so that a tax will be attracted, I don't do it. Then there will be no tax.
Tax avoidance is legal.
So that if I was going to buy a matatu and operate it, because then I will pay fuel levy, I will employ people and will pay all manner of taxes. But I don't buy it, then I won't pay any tax.
True.
And many, of course, people have withheld investments on that account in small scale, at the micro, and also at the top. The second issue is, certainly, as I speak now, I do know that the foreign direct investment is at its lowest, FDI. Reason is, people don't come to invest in Kenya because of the environment as packaged is not conducive. It used to be one of the best destinations for investment. True. Is it now? It isn't, because competitive destinations that are opening up, such as Uganda and Tanzania, are really benefiting from the Kenya. Basically an attractive investment destination. The third issue is capital flight. I come from Kilifi. There's a place called Malindi. Malindi is a dead town because the Italians who are there have moved from Malindi to Mozambique. Probably 80%.
Malindi used to be
a dead town. It used to be, when you get there, is bubbling with tourism. No plane now flies from Italy into Malindi anymore as a direct flight to bring in the tourists, and therefore it's a dead town. Now, for me, as a planner, if you're a government planner, you have projections. Honestly, you have technocrats, you have employed who will tell you there'll be floods. I thought these people were foreboded all the time that there'll be floods. If there's going to be drought, there'll still be drought. So when you are doing your budgeting, you will know that in this tenure, in this financial year, we may face, or we are, from a science perspective, it has been reported and warned to us that there'll be floods. Besides, these days, even if you watch CNN, you watch Al Jazeera and other international media, you will know the patterns, because we already saw that floods are coming. El Nino was there. And in fact, we packaged it, and there was all this hula baloo about, and then they pulled it away.
Right.
Point is, I think that the economy, we are not going to say it has been mismanaged, but the fact is it was not jump-started if it was not properly managed by the last regime.
Okay.
Fast forward is nothing good has been done to an ailing economy on account of competitiveness, political competitive that has probably been the dominant factor, as opposed to putting food on the table and looking at Wanjiku's economics. The micro aspect of the economy is that money should be allowed to circulate so that Wanjiku then generates money so that he pays taxes. And then you expand the tax base, as Kibaki economics would say, so that you get more money. More taxes will be allowing people to have money in their pocket, so they pay you more. The other way of having more taxes, which is not working, is to tax people more so that they get more money. That is short term, but it attracts friction, because people then pull away from the economic activities, as would attract investment for purposes of getting more taxes. So fast forward is where we are, because I think there was a problem. And lastly, therefore, what we have been told is not the whole truth. I think it is a packaging to give us more hope.
It's crazy. A lot of experts say Rutonomics, that's what they're calling it, the economics, according to Ruto, who claimed that he's using former President Mwai Kibaki's playbook, but a lot of experts say no. What do you say about that, Emily?
I also join in saying no. I feel in as much as our economy is strained, we've not yet prioritized cutting unnecessary expenditure. We still have a lot of globetrotting amongst very different cadres of leaders, so there are hefty allowances that are attached to that. We are not sensitive to short-term solutions to this economical crisis that we have. We are focusing on the long term. We forget the short term, so hence our currency has really depreciated. So really, hatuna pesa mfukoni.
Hatuna pesa. December. It's so sad.
On your birthday, a week of your birthday.
Wow, okay. Now that just makes it sting a little bit more. But I guess we can only hope for something to turn around come next year. We don't know. But let's skip from that to something else that is really making news right now. Controversial KCPE saga. It's not over. Yesterday, the opposition leader Raila Odinga dropped a bombshell claiming that Kenya Kwanza's administration irregularly awarded a lucrative printing tender of KCPE exams to a local firm that lacked the capacity to do so. What? The move, he says, eroded the gains, and basically the country has had to struggle with this particular particular situation because of that. Let's take a listen to highlights from that.
Collapse of education system, the collapse of a nation. You have today taken an unprecedented step and written to key education stakeholders, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, for a partnership, the circumstances under which the printing of the exams was transferred from the UK to Mombasa Road must be investigated. Kenyans must be informed of how the Mombasa Road firm was identified and awarded the tender, and if procurement laws were followed. Going by the fate of Auditor General Margaret Nyakango, we believe political interference will not allow EACC and DCI to deal with this matter, but to put this issue to the agencies as a matter of public record. The buck stops with His Excellency Mr. William Ruto.
The research obtained in the school portal was correct. No single mistake. But the transmission, that is where the engineer is here, and he was giving me some technical language of what might have happened.
There goes Education CS Ezekiel Machogu. This is quite a scandal. Like, if it is real, that's the question, though. Do you think this is this just another one of these political shenanigans, or do you feel like there's actually some truth to what opposition leader Raila Odinga is saying about this? Keithy, what's your take on it?
You know, we just coming from a regime, Magoha's regime, in matters of education management.
Oh yes, yeah.
And Kenyans were beholden to his strictness, to his leadership, his commitment. And to be honest, nobody would have associated Magoha with corruption, with sloth and complacency. You know why? Because he was forthright and he was looking to do the job as it ought to be done. The first regime of the current CS was a scandal on exam cheating, where his schools from Kisii unreasonably passed. You know, you can pass exams, but you can unreasonably pass exams. We kept quiet because obviously at that time everybody was fearing the circumstances of the regime that has just come in, and nobody said anything.
Okay.
But we do know that it was not competitive passing. We know. It can be said whatever it is, but we do know that it was not competitive. It is impossible that you can jump from a 50% performance to a 98% performance, which now has dipped back to the 50%. Why? So it is because of that shame that the shame was not propagated again now, and that's our consumption. Fast forward to a second attempt to do an exam as should be. Again, we have the most scandalous environment that has ever been experienced in this country. Do you know what it is? If you have a child who is a candidate, as a parent, you go through hell. You study yourself. You become a candidate yourself. The amount of investment is not the school fees that you pay. On the side, you buy books, you burn the midnight oil together with your child, so that then you have the confidence that in putting that effort, that child is going to do well, and you want the best for the child.
You do.
That, justice will be done this way, that he wants to go to good schools and eventually do good causes and have a good life. That's how you prepare. In fact, that's the best investment you are doing. So every Kenyan is an investor to his child in education. Now, somebody out there is a manager and a policymaker. He comes to give us excuses. That transmission of results, there was a problem. That in itself should have said, because of that, I'm resigning. That should have the ultimate that we are looking for. But look at him, he's transferring that to engineers. But he himself promised us that the exam, this time, there will be no cheating, and the results will come out in a record time, which they did, but they were not results. I will tell you why. My own nephew did the exam. He did not do sign language. He did Kiswahili. He comes from Mombasa. He did Kiswahili.
Okay.
And has been the top of his class in Kiswahili. He was told he had done sign language. They have refused to correct up to today.
No.
He does not know sign language. He never did sign language. What is he trying to tell me? What is this CS trying to tell me? Of course, I'll sue him if he doesn't change. But that is nonsensical. I mean, I have no kind words for him, because you can't tell a child who is crying every day, I didn't do sign language, why am I being awarded for sign language?
Right.
I mean, you can't tell somebody did home science when he did geography. We are smarting from that. I am telling you, the KCSE exam, we are just holding our breath because we don't know what will happen. The confusion is worse because now they're even a transitional regime of the CBC.
Right.
So he can't. This CS cannot simply manage everything about education. Why? It is not his technocrats. We saw Magoha. You know, we're not saying something that we have not experienced before. We saw how Magoha went about his way. The technical aspect, the knowledge, well, he had a linguistic approach to it, but because he was confident of his output.
And he had
we pray for his soul because he did so well for Kenyans. The standard, he said, the bar, he said, is so high that some of these people engaged in this complacency are ashamed, have been shamed by Magoha, the late Magoha. What we are saying is, the best to do for there was a cabinet reshuffle. Why wasn't he removed? Maybe it was a critical time because he was midwifing the exams. Now that the midwifing is over, why can't he just step down or simply sacked? Or alternatively, he should be replaced and taken to youth. He's not youthful himself, or some other regime. Honestly, I'm appalled, and it's not just that. I personally built a school back home. Back home.
Yeah.
And the candidates are crying on the confusion of the results. What is it trying to tell us? What are those parents telling us? Those are poor people, by the way, who do not even know whether the children will go to high school in the first place. But that is even exacerbated and made worse by the fact that the results themselves are... How is Swahili sign language? And awarding marks, and you're proud of it to tell us an engineer has messed it up. It didn't happen during Magoha's time. Now we are beginning to learn, and we should learn, that there was a tender issue. I mean, honestly, this tender economics, it's to people's lives. What was so wrong with that which is working? Why are you fixing it? Why fixing it? I mean, the exams were being printed in UK. Because there should be no leakage. Because then that's the sanctity of how we've been doing exam throughout. We can't do it here, obviously, because there'll be interest. Out of the people who are printing their exams, obviously, some will have candidates or will have an interest, or they'll sell the exam, or whatever it is. So we're minimizing this risk, and there was a reason why we were doing it the way it was. And why is that sanctity breached, such that we were trying to fix that which was working? Why were we fixing that which is working? It's appalling. It's honestly, the cabinet secretary should have resigned, and I call him to resign. At least if I was the only voice.
Do you, Emily, are you of the same opinion that, you know what, Education CS Ezekiel Mashogu should actually step down? Because it looks very evident that, there is some corruption linked to this whole fiasco with the KCPE results.
No. Until it is proven. There are allegations until they are proven.
Fair enough.
However, we have to remind ourselves that it is the responsibility of this government to protect the rights of Kenyans. And we need to start by having the interests of children at heart.
Yes.
So if it's a matter of procurement, Article 227 of the Constitution requires that for public procurement, it should be carried out in a system that is fair, that is equitable, that is transparent, that is competitive, that is cost effective. Has all this been taken into place as the former Prime Minister alleges? No. He alleges there's a corruption scandal with the procurement process of awarding of that tender. Who is it affecting most? The children. The children are our present and tomorrow. I don't believe in youth being the tomorrow. I believe we are the present and we are the tomorrow.
Yes.
So what message are you communicating to these people? One, you are discouraging them from working hard. Because I realize if I've been working hard for me to score these results, I can't get any credible results from my work hard, my working hard. Why bother? So we really need to be serious. However, in as much as I do not advocate for the CS to resign, he needs to give an explanation to Kenyans. Yeah. Kenyans need to understand really exactly what happened in a clear way.
He should. Absolutely. I agree on that one. It's crazy because now KCSE results, everyone's waiting on that one with bated breath. We'll see how that goes. Let's jump on to something else. In just 1 month, the courts have slammed the brakes on at least 4 key projects of Kenya Kwanza's government, latest being the conservatory orders on rolling out of the Maisha number IDs. They were supposed to get them, and then the court said no. As well as the privatization of government corporations now, because both of you are advocates of the High Court, and the government must be run by law. What does this mean for President Ruto's administration, given that all these things are being halted by the courts? Does it spell a crisis for the administration? Does it show like a certain level of incompetence, not being sure of ruling things out? What's your take, Kithi?
In a normal functional democracy, that's bound to happen. Mm-hmm. Reason is there are 3 arms of government. There's parliament that will make the laws, of course, oversight and representation. Executive, of course, implements all that. Then there's an oversight role as against both institutions of legislative arm and executive, mm-hmm. from the judiciary, of course, pursuant to issues brought before the Justice for Administration and Arbitration. Now, fast forward, Obama had Obamacare.
Yes.
And he really stumbled into very many problems. He also wanted the gun reforms. It didn't work until he left. He was even tearful one day because all efforts he couldn't implement them on account of the folly of democracy. He knew the right thing to do. He knew children are being slaughtered because somebody will wake up and just fire indiscriminately.
Right.
He's seen with his own eyes in his leadership. He knew what to do, but he couldn't on account of things that are beyond his control, such as the courts, mm-hmm. and the democratic process. And we must accept that. In municipal jurisdiction in Kenya, we also have courts that have that role too. I do think that we need to develop, such as to have the parameters within which to administer public administrative actions.
Uh-huh.
One of it, which then the Constitution recognizes, and world over it is a developing concept, is public participation. You cannot develop a law without asking the people, do you want this law? Exactly. Or what are your views?
Yeah.
If you do it, then you have to do it adequately. You must then engage with the public adequately. That is public participation. There's no law on public participation. I think that is where the problem is. And I have argued this before the courts before, that there must be a recommendation on law to the extent of public participation as will be legal or illegal, because then it remains a perception. If you want to dig a toilet somewhere, you must ask the people, do you need these toilets? They will tell you, we have 6 toilets, we don't need that one. What you do is put a classroom, for instance. And that's the concept of public participation, so that then the public gets the most from its needs. And that's why there's democracy. If you don't engage with the public, you can engage with them, and again, because there's something you want, ignore them. Again, that becomes a problem of the folly of democracy. They will then go to court, because that's ultimately where they should, and complain that you're putting up a toilet. We said we don't need it. Look, we have even 6 of them. What we wanted was a classroom. Now, point is, the public looks at very small issues of miscreants, the omissions, especially omissions, like on the issue of public participation. The second issue will be the courts look at processes. The issue may not be illegal, because what was done was not illegal. Like the law may not be illegal, but the process may have omitted certain things that ought to have been done that were not done. And eventually, there's also the public interest factor that looked up to. That's an overriding factor. So, I think what needs is that's like this. The administrative secretaries, that issue was stopped until today. It's still in court. The courts pronounce themselves that administrative secretaries are not illegal, but the process itself is what then makes it illegal, like we see in law. Procedure is the handmaiden of substance. So if the procedure was wrong, the substance itself becomes illegal. Suffice it to say, even if the law seems to be good, but the process was wrong, then the law becomes illegal. That's the constitutionality aspect that will be looked in. So overriding, therefore, the public interest factor ordinarily is what is looked at for purposes of looking at confirming the illegality, eventual illegality or illegality if questioned. As we speak, on the face of it, which is say prima facie, the court has confirmed there's a problem that needs to be sorted out. So eventually, we'll have to wait until the courts make a determination. But remember, this is an interim order stopping it. Now let's come to politics. Kenya Kwanza wanted to make reforms at NHIF. Why do we need the reforms? There's a problem at NHIF, the body, because it could not satisfy the very intention of providing insurance to the people. It has done to some extent. Certainly, it's a very improved version of what we used to have in yesteryears of the 80s and 90s. But the very aspect, the very component of the intention has not been achieved. That's why we had these reforms. But it was broken into three, so that then it will thrive in different facets. That invites further contribution of the public as opposed to what they're contributing now. In fact, that is what then probably has excited the people to go to court. The further contributions that will be invited. In NSSF, there's further contribution money was added, NHIF, and taxes. So it is being packaged. Well, it came out as if it was further taxation. But for me, it was insurance in the circumstances. The other issue is universal health care, whether it is going to be achieved on account of how it has been legislated. What I know is we took the best, having looked at it, we took the best standards, healthcare standards, I think in South Africa and the US, and trying to implement them. Certainly, like Lord Denning said, an eagle moving to Africa cannot thrive in the manner that it thrived when it was an English eagle. It has become an Africanized eagle. So we must always be able to customize our laws to suit situations and not cut and paste. For me, part of it was a cut and paste law, and that's where the problem is. We can't go into the merits, obviously, because it's before the court. But some total of it is a prediction was made, and is still made, that it was going to run into doldrums with the law on account of the fact that I think it was a cut and paste law, and it's simply packaged as a further taxation. Yet I think it is supposed to be an insurance regime that protects the people. We need them, because there are people out there who are going for dialysis. There are people there with cancer. There are people there with ailments that are existential and we will say what perennial in nature, such as that you have to live with it. Those ones need constant insurance for purposes of going through that. So we need it. We need that regime. The reforms are good, but I do think the questions being raised by Kenyans was in the manner of packaging, and further will be seen as taxation. I think that's where probably the friction is.
Okay. Emily, do you think is it giving confidence to the people, the directives coming through from the courts, that we're not going to just lay back and let whatever the president decides to have happen to us, or do we have mixed feelings on it?
First, it's to appreciate the separation of power and independence of institutions. That we have, we can respect court decisions, we appreciate them, and we take note of them. As the executive, as the legislative arm of government, because the three different arms are separate indeed. In regard to the current rulings, for example, under privatization of the 11 parastatals, Key among the issues raised by court was on public participation, and my senior here has really explained on the importance of public participation in encouraging and ensuring there's good governance and democracy is observed. The next was on observing the principles of public finance management. We're seeking to privatize these institutions for the basic reason to generate revenue for the government. Question is, one, are these, for instance, institutions of national heritage, having in mind KICC? KICC is our own national pride. It's our own identity. So, like even the design, I was reading, the design was made by our own, and what informed the design was Chief Architect David Mutiso revealed he was inspired by a donkey's erect penis in designing the iconic Kenyatta International Conference Center.
I used to think that was a myth.
Unfortunately, it's not. So these are things that we should pride in. we really pride in, as in he sat and thought and came up with such a beautiful building.
and happy birthday to you.
Will the economic need that we have right now supersede protection of such a national heritage? Next is on national security and strategic importance. For instance, where we put control over the hands of a few people. For instance, the Kenya Seed Company. Protection of food security is a core mandate of the government. We had previously an issue of bringing in the GMOs. Although court refused that, the truth is they're already in circulation. So if we do such kind of things, will we have food security? Will we still have the need to import maize, to import rice, or can we sustain our own through such institutions that are really not profit-making, but they protect the main interest of the mwananchi? The next ruling was on the digital ID. Honestly, it isn't identification. However, there is the whole data protection issue, and the main thing is the data protection impact assessment ought to have been done. Why are we doing data protection impact assessment? In order to protect rights of common mwananchi. For once the government has your iris and your finger, the thumb, the print, can that information be used against you? Can they infringe it? Political rights, like where we have this second generation ID, but we still you can find yourself being registered to a different political party. Now that they will have your details with them, can they still infringe the same? Who is the custodian of this data? What happens once your rights are infringed? What recourse do you have? So those are the issues that you're having, and I think there is need for consideration into the processes, the procedure before we even if law has good intention, let's focus on the procedure as well.
Indeed. I like that. Going to our Facebook page, there's been a lot of comments regarding what we're talking about this morning. Miriam Russ from Kilifi said, with this kind of economy, people sleeping hungry, others are dying in the floods. Where does the country get money for a referendum? We're about to talk about that in just a second, because we asked listeners whether a call for a referendum is a priority right about now, because the debate on the recommendations from the National Dialogue Committee, there was to get a referendum, but it goes very, very different ways. Let's first take a listen to some of the highlights on that.
Certain aspects must be approved by the people by way of a referendum. To create the office of the leader of opposition, or to formalize the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the people of Kenya have to have their say by way of a referendum.
For now, with the current cost of living, of course, the referendum is not recommended now.
And in any case, we don't have a functional IBC in place. Let us fix the cost of living. Tuachana mambo ya referendum kwanza, waendelee kufanya oversight kwa serikali. Lakini wasitumie hiyo njia ya bipartisan to try and sneak into the government.
Referendum ni pesa. Wakipeleka mambo haya kwa referendum, then itaumiza taxpayer. Kwa hivyo hatutaki referendum saa hii.
Absolutely true. Now, our production team went out to ask Kenyans as well, what do you think? Do we need a referendum? This was the report they filed.
My name is James Nganga. On the issue of a referendum being a priority, I think Kenya is changing for now, politically and economically, so we have to adjust with those changes. For example, the privatization bill, it will benefit our economy in a way. Considering a referendum right now can be a very nice option to adjust to the changes both economically and politically.
I'm Natasha. I don't think a referendum is really a priority for Kenyans right now because we're really struggling with the economy. I don't feel like it's very necessary because in real sense, when they decide to bring a referendum, it's going to lead to use of more money.
My name is Henry. It's a good idea. For example, concerning the issue of privatization of public asset, we should not privatize public asset like KICC. So I feel like if they adjust the constitution through the referendum, it's going to cater for such issues.
My name is Gloria Mwende. I don't think it's a priority right now. The money that they're going to use on the referendum, they should use it on more pressing issues that are affecting citizens.
My name is Kevin Musembi. For me, it's not a priority right now in our nation because we are facing a lot of challenges, and I feel like these issues are things that can wait for another time. There are so many other things to tackle. I don't feel it's going to be a helpful thing.
Shoutouts to Kelvin and Kennedy for going out there and sampling those different views from Kenyans. Even on our Facebook page, everyone says we don't have time, patience, money for a referendum. We need food. We need to solve the issue with flooding. And then Joseph K. and Dati Bob, I wish I could read your entire comment. Just part of it says we spend time, resources, energy on these issues that in fact raise divisions and hence tensions in our homogeneous society. And a whole lot of other very great points he mentioned. Please go to our Facebook page, KBC English Service, and look at it. Keithy, referendum, really? Really? What do you think?
Well, I think I'll address it in the context of law first, and then the very practical, the issues that we are facing today. The issue of referendum was a debate that we had last time when we had the BBI. And we failed to get to that extent on account of, court interventions. If we're going to have a referendum now, we'd rather have it for comprehensive issues as we intended to do at the BBI then, because either way, the price is still the same. The price we're going to pay is still the same. The issues we're going to ask now are not fully reformist issues as to what then we think afflicts the Constitution relational to our existential issues, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. For instance, there are many other issues in the Constitution that were looked at the BBI and agreed by Kenyans that they need to move for reforms, and yet we did not get there, and they are not part of the process that is being proposed now. It is a narrowed issue, and it's not comprehensive enough. So it means we are curing through a very heavy price, a minute issue within what otherwise will be the spread of the issues that ought to be looked into. Yes, some of the issues call for referendum, and some of the issues can be dealt with without engaging in a referendum for purpose of transiting into management of the issues of complaint as afflicted this country after the election. And the demonstrations and to where we are. Now, I will repeat this with your permission. In a context such as one we have between government and opposition, there are two issues that emerge. The context is being driven by the voice of politicians and leadership. That is not the voice necessary of the Kenyan. The politician to survive is usually the dominant issue that is going to be dealt with. So if then it takes a referendum for the politician to survive, that's the dominant issue that will be discussed. It will be packaged in a manner such as then to complement the needs of the people and therefore the Wanjikos. So that the dominant issue now is not the cost of living. The dominant issue is on positions that need to be ingrained constitutionally so that then people occupy those positions. Now, it is fearsome for them to be anchored in a statute or a law as opposed to be in the constitution, because then the power, if it's not a constitutional office, is different. It becomes probably a relegated power from a constitutional office. And that's why then the dominance will be, we go to a referendum so that then we can execute the needs of a politician and the political class. Certainly we can't go for a referendum to discuss price of unga in a constitution. We can't. And therefore, what we are having in this debate of a referendum or no referendum, unfortunately, is an appeasement to the political class and the ruling class as opposed to the Wanjikus. The Wanjiku does not need a referendum because the Wanjiku needs to fix the economy fix. That is not a constitutional referendum issue. It is certainly an issue that is existential, and all you need to say, okay, we're going to have subsidies, we're going to introduce this and this and this, and we're going to scrap G2G and so on and so forth. That has nothing to do with a referendum. Now, that's why I say it. Therefore, in the priority of things as is now, first it is the politician to be satisfied, meaning the master back home. When you are a servant, eats first, and then that which remains goes back to the servant. Now, as servants, because we are tools of trade for politicians, is this, that we remain subdued in our needs, because the first needs that will be addressed, whether we like it or not, shall be those of the politician. That's why now the packaging of a referendum is to address the existing political issue afflicting the political class. That has nothing to do with Wanjiku. Wanjiku's issue of economy certainly cannot attract a referendum.
Hey, Emily, do you feel the same, that this is all, a referendum is just all for the politics and not about us?
Unfortunately, I feel the same as well, because this referendum is just to address political interests and not the current issues that are facing all Kenyans, not just common Mwananchi, all Kenyans. Remember, we are having floods right now. Yeah. Kenyans are displaced out of floods. There are disease outbreaks. Last night I was just listening to the cholera outbreak that has become so rampant. We don't have money. There's no money. Hatuna pesa mfukoni. So that strained economy, is that the kind of person you're subjecting to protecting or to engaging in a discourse on political interests? Right now, what we need are short-term solutions where there will be goodwill from government, all our representatives, members of parliament, and they all agree to reduce VAT on fuel. You see, from the onset of this constitution of this committee, really there was no interest of Mwananchi before their political interest. That is why they were not even able to agree on matters of cost of living that are short-term in nature. They just said reduce expenditure, budget, travel allocations. But really, how can you measure what has been reduced? While indeed you can address that which directly affects the common Mwananchi, which is on the taxation, high taxation on fuel. If you really have goodwill, you can do that, and we don't need a referendum. I agree with my senior.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's Real Talk. It's 9 minutes to 9. Edward Kabasa coming in 9 minutes with the news. Final thing that we must talk about. You had started speaking about it earlier on, and it's about the privatization of corporations. So, a quick thing, like when you look at Kenya Pipeline, KICC, KCC, majority leader in Parliament is dismissing those who are opposed to this as ignorant, including Homa Bay Town MP Peter Kalumu, who's also a lawyer, who had the following to say. Take a listen to this.
When a person sits down and imagines you can sell Kenyatta International Conference Center, that national heritage, uko na tabu. When a person sits down and he can imagine you can sell Kenya Pipeline Corporation to himself or his friends, iko tabu. Sababu ya hiyo mimi nataka kuwaomba muangalie Article 144 of the Constitution.
Honorable Speaker, all the negative propaganda that is being propagated in line with what we have done here with the Privatization Act, Honorable Speaker, people must know, those who are propagating this negative propaganda, that government assets are being sold for a song.
Now, question is, at what point does the privatization bill being talked about there by Chungwa meet? I believe is it Article 41 of the Constitution talked about by Kaluma? What exactly does that hold, Keithy?
Now here's the let me just unpack this so that the public, the listeners will understand. There is justification in disposing public assets to raise funds. That is one of the ways in which the public, the government raises funds.
Okay.
Government should not engage in business because it is competing with its own people. It must provide an environment so as to enhance a business environment. Now, I'll give you an example.
Please do.
At the beginning of this country, meaning in 1963 or thereabouts, there was no tourism. There were no hotels. So the government, therefore, as many governments will have done in other jurisdictions, had to build hotels. Those hotels were then run for some time, so that then tourism, there can be circuits that are created in Voi, in Masai Mara, in Nairobi, in Mombasa, those areas that you want to open them up for tourism, because there are no investors at that time.
True.
But because investors came in, and alongside those hotel infrastructure put their own hotels. That's why the coastline is littered with hotels today.
This is true.
And Masai Mara, there is even no place for those animals to migrate again, and so on and so forth. You then divest, you sell. It's called divesting. You sell those hotels. Water, you supply water cheaply to the people. You supply electricity cheaply to the people. If you privatize, then people will commercialize a very basic need such as water, as electricity. And therefore, eventually, the cost of production will be high. And therefore, it will not spur development. That's why government then takes up such as distribution of water. Water production, distribution of water becomes a salient issue the government itself takes up through tax, right? And electricity. Of course, electricity, we have issues through mismanagement, but that's the ideal. When then it comes a time when it is no longer economically viable, one, or alternatively, the infrastructure for that segment of industry is developed enough, the government must inevitably divest. That's the ideal. However, if I want, for instance, Mombasa Beach belongs to government.
Okay.
The example I gave. If I want to buy it, I run it down. I make it loss-making so that I buy it for a song. Ordinarily, parastatals are supposed to be sold when they are doing the most. They are the best. Like Kenya Meat Commission, for instance, was on its knees. It was given to the military. Now it is doing very. You can see even they have their stalls all over. Now, when it is profitable, that's the best time to divest. On account of the fact you get the best.
You get the best.
And you raise money from it. And then the supply of meat, international and here, can be through whatever institution would be called, whether it's conducive to meat, Kenya Meat Commission, KCC, which is Kenya Cooperative Creameries, where we sell our milk. Ordinarily, it's supposed to organize the farmer so that he has a place where he takes his milk. The milk is not there must be an infrastructure from production to the market. Now that system is disrupted if then there is no such infrastructure. That's why KCC was established. I'll give an example. There's a place called Mariakani in Kilifi where the KCC had a branch. When that branch was closed on account of mismanagement, of course, by government, then all farmers had nowhere to take their milk, and therefore animal production and husbandry, people are not rearing cattle anymore on that account alone, right? Because there's no market. And that continues with why government justifies why government establishes such institution and therefore eventually divest. The issue raised by Mr. Kaluma, who was my classmate, is this, and I think he's right. You do not sell an institution when one has been mismanaged. You first revamp it. We first have to make a queue profitable before we can sell it.
Before we can sell it.
We cannot sell it as lowest because we do know that is where then there's a window. In fact, the interest to run it down when you want to buy it makes commercial sense for the private sector, right? Mm-hmm. So a bank that is making loss, you buy it off on account for a song. We want that. What I think the clarion call is, I think we want more views, we want more time, and we want the institutions to be very going concerns until such a time that we get the most prices. And also, we want it to be more competitive. The question is, again, do you want to sell what you want, or you want to sell what we want as Kenyans for you to sell? Honestly, there'll be a lot of friction if you sold KICC. Because, we used to take pictures there. That fact alone, the fact that you want to leave your village, go to KICC and take a photo, don't want it.
Of you touching the roof.
Yes, it is symbolic. There are certain things that are symbolic, and therefore you cannot privatize. What you should sell is what Kenyans want you to sell, and what you feel is opportunity time to sell. And also public participation. Ask us what we want. Kenya Pipeline, distribution of mere an infrastructure to spread out and privatize, because then infrastructure development will be more. You need to extend the pipeline distribution so that then the cost of fuel can go down. That's one way. So if you privatize that, we can have a debate on that. But certain things that you can't touch because they're the heart of value of our own heritage, national pride. Certain symbolisms are not for auction. They are supposed to be for inheritance, this and our further generations. So if we say you're selling KCC, you're selling Uhuru's father's monument, you realize, and I think we all beholden to what KCC is, and we've struggled because it was given to KANU, then we wrestled KANU away, and now we have it again, we've salvaged it. I think the struggle shall continue to be there. Uhuru Park was also being privatized here. It was being given. Wangari Maathai fought it until she got a Nobel Prize out of it on account of the publicity she got and the struggle she went through. I think we have Uhuru Park because somebody stood and made sure that it was not going to be sold. Absolutely. And I think we are where we are because we need to protect our own. We protected Uhuru Park. We are going to protect KICC. That which can be sold, and that which we do not want to be sold should not be sold.
Ooh, okay. Final words. Let's get from Emily. What's your take on this?
There are other options other than privatization. There's merger, where there's duplicity of functions for the different parastatals. And even as we continue with public there is need for public participation.
Absolutely.
And my request to the government is to ensure that during this privatization process, they protect Kenyans from monopolization of these entities that we hold dear to us. Thank you, and good week, Kenyans.
Well said. Emily Murigu, Advocate of the High Court. George Kithi, Advocate of the High Court as well. Thank you guys for coming in, having this discussion. Let us catch up next week when we take stock of this country in legal affairs and governance concerned.
This is the big conversation on The Breakfast Show here on KBC English Service. BC 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 English Service.